All right, Sev. I don't even know what episode. We haven't got canceled yet, so I don't even know what episode this is. So
5, sweet Chuck.
what?
Episode 5.
Yeah. Well, they said that's about 8 episodes too much for us. But we're going to talk about trainers today. Let's set this fictitious clock that we never follow to 23:23. And no one can see it anyway because my $12 camera doesn't really work. But we're going to set it to 23:23. Let's go with trainers today. All right. Big part of the landscape of basketball at all levels. We both came from the training aspect working for Grover. I've always worked players out before we got, to the pro level or whatever. So, we sort of have some experience a little bit with it before it sort of took off into what it is now. Let's talk about it. So what do you got?
Well, I don't know if this is coincidence or not, but I think the evolution and the explosion of the personal trainer coincided with the advent of the iPhone.
Oh, well, yeah.
If you think about that, the iPhone came into existence about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and that's when we kind of saw the explosion of the trainer in the basketball world. So is it coincidence? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the timeline because, coming up, you and I, we didn't have trainers. We had coaches.
Yeah.
Guys that worked with you were your coaches. And so this trainer explosion that we've seen in the last 13 to 15 years, and now it seems like, every NBA guy has their own trainer. And we'll get into that later. But, trainers can mean different things for different levels of players. And I think you and I will talk about, all 3 levels, the high school and then the college and then the professional level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely part of the landscape. Like every high school kid, every college kid, every pro guy. It used to be like guys just played, and then some people had trainers. Like, obviously Grover was the first person I heard about having a personal guy that worked him out on the strength end and with Tim Grover. And then, you had some of these other players that had them. When we were with MJ, we were with Grover in Chicago. Then you had Joe Bunasar that was in, Florida and Vegas, working out players.
Right.
But you didn't really hear about a lot of others. And then some more popped up, and then more popped up. It was sort of like gremlins when, it's like gremlins when you get them wet. They multiply and multiply to multiply. So they're just part of the landscape. And not just like anything else, not all bad, but overwhelmingly not all good. So, I think we should talk about, because a lot of people who do train players, watch us and listen to us. So I think talking about that would be beneficial as well. So,
and our experience, with a trainer like Tim was different than anybody else, in my opinion, because he was one of the first to get in on the ground floor. And you and I really, working for him, never dealt with high school kids or middle school kids really, or elementary kids. So I think we first need to look at it from the parent's point of view. If you're a parent that's looking to have your kid trained as a high school or middle school player, and I think there's certain things that parents need to really be aware of. And then I'll just kind of go through my list, and then maybe you can add to it.
Sure.
So if I'm a parent looking to get a trainer for my kid, number one is they got to do their homework. They got to research the so-called trainer to see what his background is, if he has any actual coaching knowledge.
Right.
Number two, they got to watch him. Before you hire this person to work with you, go watch him work and get a feel for, what his teaching methods are. How big the group is, how does he relate to the players? So you got to watch him work before you just pay a bunch of money to have him work with your kid. The third thing I think is you need to discuss the plan with the trainer. Just not just write him a blank check without discussing what's the plan for my son or my daughter.
Right.
Third thing is if I'm a parent, I'm going to be on the lookout for fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Is he fundamentally doing what he's supposed to do? Passing, shooting, dribbling, movement without the ball, competitive drills, all those things, the fundamental things, I think are important. And then the last thing is, if I'm a parent, I'm looking to avoid all the fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to see 13 dribble moves and step back threes that me and you talk about all the time. If I'm a high school or a middle school parent and I see a bunch of videos and stuff on Instagram and Facebook of the trainer, be wary. Now, pro guys is different. But if I'm a high school or a middle school parent and I see nothing but videos and stuff online of all this tricky stuff that they're doing for a high school, middle school kid, buyer beware.
Yeah. I think if you look at it on the other end, on the trainer's end, first of all, all the fancy and tricky stuff that you see James Harden doing, Steph Curry doing, Luka Doncic doing, LeBron James doing, and you train every player the same into doing things like that. You don't train every player the same. And I think that every player sort of has a different sort of trajectory of where they're going with their current state of career. Like, how about talking to their coach and saying, hey, look, what do I need? What does this player need to do better to get minutes for you? Because if you're just doing stuff to do it and you're doing all this fancy stuff that's way above the player's sort of grasp of basketball, then you're just sort of wasting time. So I think,
totally agree. And, my first experience in the NBA with a trainer,
mm-hmm.
I'll remember it it was yesterday, and it was with the Bulls,
mm-hmm.
and we're in the summertime before the season started, and we had a certain player who had his trainer up from Florida in the gym working with him. And, we were able to have some dialogue after the first workout about what the direction should be for this player. So he actually got the coach's input to direct that workout. But we've seen it both ways. We've seen there's no interaction with the coaching staff to try to coordinate a plan.
And sometimes it's not the trainer's fault. Sometimes they'll, coaches, it's sort of like coaches and AAU coaches. There's some territorial things that go on that and they're rough dealing with each other. I think that, look, if I'm a coach and I have a player working with a trainer and a trainer calls me, I'm going to have to call because I'm going to have to talk and communicate, because at least give it a try, because this is the play. I can't work with my player mostly in the summer. Most coaches can't. So if this is the person that's going to be working with my player, at least give them some feedback. Look, they got to get better at this, that, and this. And, and that's the plan. And then the trainer should have that idea of, okay, now I have at least somewhere to go with this. And if you're just a trainer that can't get anybody better because you don't correct, you don't stop drills, and you're all about just doing this fancy stuff all over the floor on these moves that you watch on SportsCenter the night before or on Twitter and Instagram the day before, and you're like, oh, I just got to add this because of these players doing it. And then again, the player that you're working with should never be doing that in a game. Then we're just sort of spinning our wheels and you're stealing money. And there are a lot of good trainers that could get players better. They were former coaches, a lot of them experienced in coaching and know how to get players better, and they work on simple things that are going to get them better. And then you get the really good player that you work with that sometimes you're going to have to do more of a higher level thing, at any high school, college, or pro. But you just can't work with every player the same and trying to turn them into a high level player. It doesn't really work that way,
Every player is different. Every player has a different need. Every player has a different way that they learn. And so, and you and I have seen a lot of these guys. And my job, I'm fortunate enough to be able to spend my summers going around and just kind of watching trainers work. Now, it's mainly with pro guys.
Sure.
But I do watch some, with the younger kids too. And so we're able to see we see the whole spectrum. Mm-hmm. From the guys that are really high level and doing what we consider is the right thing for the players.
Right.
And then we've seen some trainers with high level players. And I look and I'm thinking, why are they doing that? Why do they have this 7-foot rim running center working on dribble threes?
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
We've seen the whole spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes with trainers, and not all of them, but a lot of them, getting better is boring. It is boring. It's a lot of the same things daily to just get minimal results and get better a little bit and get better a little bit, and then have this 2 or 3 year plan with a player rather than like trying to like go from a nobody to like third option on a team or second option on a team. That stuff really doesn't work that way. And I think a lot of trainers try to sell it like that and think they really can do that. And, you know, they sell it to players like crack dealers sometimes, like, hey, you know, your coaches are holding you back. You really should be doing this, when that's not really the case. The coach, just like anybody else, wants to win, and trying to get this player gradually better to get to a place where a coach could trust and give him consistent minutes and opportunity, and then try to add more and gradually add more, I think is good. But I think a lot of trainers feel as though that's boring and doing boring things every day. But if you watch an actual NBA workout, not one that a trainer says an NBA workout, it's a boring thing. It's what, for the most part, it's shooting the same type of shots every day because that's what you do.
Yeah, and repetition is not punishment.
Yeah.
Boring is boring, but through the boredom is how you get improvement.
Yes.
That's really the bottom line, the way I see it.
Yeah.
The other thing, Sweet Chuck, that you and I talk about quite a bit is you know, the trainer is the one getting paid by the player.
Right.
And we're talking about the NBA level now.
Right.
So, you know, the power of that dollar can kind of sometimes compromise your principles or your beliefs.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to give up the dollar or the client. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I've seen them have a tendency to give in to the player.
Right.
You know, oh, I'm not feeling it today. You know, why are we working on this? Let's do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're the one writing the check. We'll do what you want.
Yeah.
And I've seen trainers, high level trainers too, put their foot down and say, no, this is what you need.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen both of them, but be wary of the ones that are just going to bow down to the almighty dollar.
Yeah. I mean, that's true at the pro level. At the high school and college level, when they're working with a trainer, I always say, look, they're working for you. You're paying them. Well, some of them pay, some of them don't, but like, you're paying the trainer. So like, if they're dictating what you're doing, but you really know what you need to get better at, you got to tell the trainer, look, this is what I want to get better at. You know, if you want to add something to my game that you feel as though we need to, that's great. Let's do that. But we got to spend a majority of my time. You got to self-evaluate your game and be like, all right, this is what I do. Let's continue to do this for like, say 70% of your workout, and then give that trainer that 30% on what they think, or a combination of what they think you need to add and what you think you need to add. But I think a lot of players, coaches, a lot of players and parents are like, just hand it over to the trainer, and then the trainer, now you got to trust the trainer really knows what they're doing and really knows, look, this is the best for my son or daughter, or they're just going to do this, you know, carnival act, you know, of like juggling, you know, butcher knives, for God's sakes, you know, trying to like help your son or daughter. And most times it's not going to go, you know, your way. So, you know,
if getting back to the middle school, high school type kid, advice to parents, you know, understand the size of the group matters.
Yeah.
You know, be very aware of, you know, how many kids are on the floor and actually getting reps in at a time. If your trainer has a group of 8 to 10 kids, that's a lot of standing around.
Yeah.
You know, 3 kids, maybe max, maybe 4. Mm-hmm. So if I'm paying money, I want to make sure that it's a smaller group and that your son or daughter is getting, you know, the proper reps and not just standing around a whole bunch.
Yeah. And if I'm a trainer, I'm going to try to like have these groups. Like, I don't mind 4 to 6, but like have these groups go where you're getting a lot of reps, you're getting a lot of instruction, you're stopping it really quick sound bite on the correction, then move on. And then have these players actually do these things live. Like, I think that if you're just working on these moves against a chair 1-on-0, and that's all you're doing, and then you hand off the player to like play in their games, I think teaching them the move or whatever you're going to teach, and then actually doing it live with the group of 4 to 6 where you're playing 3-on-3, or maybe you have these 3 groups in the morning time, if we're talking about summer, and 3 groups in the morning time. In the afternoon, you organize a run, and you organize, actually games where, it's controlled scrimmage, or you're working on the things that you worked on in your workouts, but now you put it in a game aspect, and they got to do it with cutters and for the players with defense and whatnot. But, I think you definitely need the work, individually, but then you definitely need the actual in-game to actually work on the things that you're sort of working on,
and that's one of the best things that you and I experienced with Tim.
Yeah.
Was, the morning work was great, but the afternoon runs, where they were trying to work on stuff in a 5-on-5 setting with referees. The people, Tim didn't open his stuff up to media and social media and all that, but people have no idea what a great setup that was with the morning workouts and the afternoon runs. It was tremendous.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my first day, like it was great because he didn't put me with like Jawan Howard and Michael Finley.
Right.
He was trying to just figure me out. So I would work with like Bobby Simmons, who didn't really make it yet. He was still on his rookie deal. I had like Bobby Simmons, Rashad Griffiths, who played overseas, a bunch of these other players. But yeah, like we had workout. You had your court workout, then you had your weight workout, then you came back, ate lunch, and you came back at like 2:00 to play. NBA referees, shot clock, game clock, actually organized it. And it was good. Picked the team, Tim picked the teams, made sure they were even, and they played. And I think getting that instruction, that weight work, and then the game work is great. But one thing that I think you and I have talked about a lot with trainers is like, there's 450 NBA players, yet there's 3,241 trainers that worked with NBA players. So
yeah, and if you don't believe it, just go on Twitter.
Yeah, no doubt.
Put in NBA trainer and see how many guys pop up.
Yeah, and look, like if I'm a parent, I'm not worrying about if a trainer has worked with NBA players or not. I want to make sure they can make a player better, and that's the big thing with trainers these days. All they want to do is get the great player. And like I never see these success stories of like I see these trainers that work with like first 3-team NBA players, and then they're like, yeah, I'm their trainer, da da da. I want to see the guy or the girl that's working with the player that's like D-League, non-NBA player, non-drafted, not on anyone's board, and work them into like the 11th best player on an NBA team or 9th best player. I want to know the trainer that could turn the player that's average to below average and turn them into average to above average. That's what I want. Because those trainers could actually make players better. They're not just taking great players. I always say it's like being Dominique Wilkins' jump coach. Right. Like you're going to take credit for that. Like that player was already a great player. You and I are big Harry Bosch fans. I can't read because I'm borderline illiterate, so I'm listening to it on Audible, but I'm listening to The Last Coyote. He said something that's fantastic. He was talking about like I think he was talking about just people. They all matter or nobody matters. In my opinion, every type of player that I'm getting paid to work with matters. Not just the great ones, not just the really good ones. They all matter or none of them matter. And I think that's the philosophy as a trainer you need to take. Like, take that. Now, don't take the project that the player, like you're just babysitting. Now, if that's what you do, that's what you do. But I'm saying you got to be able to, if you're a real trainer or someone who's good in development, you can take that player that's just average and add one skill to them that sort of ups their value. You're not just taking the player that's like 6'9", getting recruited by every high major and just like patting yourself on the back like you did something that day. I want you to take that player, not the average player and turn him into an NBA player. That doesn't happen. But take that average player and turn him up above average. That to me, forget about how many NBA players they train. We know trainers that don't work with any NBA players that are great, and we know trainers that work with 30 NBA players and they're awful. So I mean, it doesn't matter how many NBA players you work with. It matters, do you know what you're doing or you don't?
And can you get that player just a notch? Maybe he's a high school 7th man on his varsity.
Yes.
Can you get that guy to be a starter on his high school team?
Yes.
He's a high school starter. Can maybe you get him to be an all-league player? Maybe recruited by Division II or III.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are really the success stories when it comes to trainers. Quick question for you, and you and I really haven't talked too much about this before. what's your philosophy on working with the guy as far as what's more important to develop a weakness or to enhance a strength?
I think, Sev, during the season, it's all about enhancing the strength. During the off season, I think it should be like during the season to me, and I want your input obviously on this, like it's like 90-10. It's 90% what you're doing and what your skill is, your strength is to help our team. And it's like 10%, okay, let's work on something that eventually 2 or 3 months down the line, this could really help us. Or maybe it's a year away. And then in the off season, it should probably be like 70-30, 65-35 of
Okay.
what you're good at and then the weakness.
Okay.
Just because I think you need to train the brain into doing this is what I do in games during the season. And then in the off season, then you could venture out to try to work on something that you really want to do that you could add to the next season. What's your philosophy?
No, I'm with you on that. The one exception I would say is if and to me it's free throws.
Yep.
I really am. If a guy's a bad free throw shooter, he's not where he needs to be percentage wise, and that's a constant.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to me that's really important year round. Is if that's a weakness, that has to be worked on year round, not just in the summer. But everything else, yeah. I think I agree with you on that. I'm right on the money. But when it comes to free throws, I think it has to be a constant improvement.
Yeah, and I think there are things that are constant, Sev. Like if somebody's like a really bad shooter, yes, you're not going to correct the shot unless they're injured and they're not playing all year. But like free throw shooting is something that comes up all the time. And if like I remember when we had Rajon Rondo in Dallas, Rajon would, after every game, he would go to our practice court, after every home game, and he had 8 baskets around one court, and he would make 5 in a row and go to 8 courts 5 in a row. And it really helped him. And if he didn't make 5 in a row and he missed 2 in a row, he had to go to basket back.
Yeah.
And I think that, that he got dramatically better. He shot like 70, I think he was shooting in the 40s when he got to Dallas. And at the end, at the last 20 games a year, he was shooting only in the last 20, like 76 from the line. And because he put the work in, I think you can't stare away from that. Now, maybe a weakness is you're not an isolation player. You don't have that go-to move. And you're like, all right, you're not an isolation player right now. And maybe you will never be one, but let's like concentrate on the things that you do to get in a game right now. And then we'll add a little bit on the ISO thing. But in the off season, we're really going to tackle that. So Next year, you really ramp it up. But I think skills like ball handling, free throw shooting, even if you're bad at it and it's considered a weakness, you got to continue to work on it at a decent rate during the season, because that's going to come up constantly. But I think things that are away from your spectrum is something that you probably shouldn't spend a lot of time in season, because you don't want to try that in a game when that's going to really affect your sort of place on the team,
Yeah. And a couple things. First of all, Rondo gets to 76%, so he gets to have his name up above your door.
No doubt. Absolutely.
If he's at 68, he doesn't get the name.
No. And then
and the second thing is, and if you're working with professional guys during the season, and you're doing crazy stuff that's not going to apply to the game, the first thing that's going to happen is the head coach is going to call you on it.
No question about it.
He doesn't want to look down there and see you working with his guys on crazy stuff that's never going to get him into his rotation on that head coach. So you got to be aware of the head coach also.
No doubt. I think, when all my years with Grover, I don't think I've ever worked out a player in season. The closest thing that ever happened is we had Raymond Felton. He was in Charlotte, and I flew up to Charlotte to work with him for about a week or 10 days. And it felt a little weird actually being in their practice facility. Thank God we moved. We actually it was actually pretty cool. We went to Chapel Hill from Charlotte and worked out at Chapel Hill. But, I felt a little funny doing it. I think the only thing as a trainer, and I think more trainers need to understand this, is be that person that, during the season, talk to your players. If they want to find a gym and get shots up, great. But, and I guess maybe you need this to keep them as a client, but I wouldn't be hey, we need to be working on this. Your coach is not doing this. I worked with Kobe for 4 years. I don't think I've ever said, like Phil Jackson needs to be running this for you or this and that. It was more like more talking during the season than anything, like, getting them to a place where they're productive. Like, I never worked out Kobe during the season, so it was different. But if I did, it would be more just rebounding for him and letting him vent or talk, or maybe if he asked me some questions, I'll be there. But if you're working on some crazy things and it's against what the coach is running, again, that's where you don't want to be generalized as a trainer. You want to be a player development coach. You want to be a coach, a trainer sometimes. And I guess you might, somebody might love the term, but like, you don't want to be grouped in the crazy trainer, the trainer that's like, you don't want anyone working with this guy. You want to be the guy or the girl that's like, someone comes in, players trust you, you do a good job, you get them better, and then you're out. And then the Instagram thing, I get it. Like, everybody needs to do that to some degree, because you need clients. And I think to get your name out there, sometimes you need to do that. But if you're all about that and you're not, and you're bad Christmas and you got no presence and you got no substance to you, like that, then if you're all about social media and not about substance, then you get grouped into that, that trainer deal, like, there's good trainers and bad trainers. You don't want to be grouped over there. You want to be grouped over here, where it's like, yeah, I could trust a player going to that guy, that person, because I know they're going to communicate with me and the coaching staff. They know they're working on good stuff. They're going to get better. And then if the player vents to them, they're going to diffuse the situation rather than like jumping all over it to like get that player down that path,
Yeah, and it kind of comes down to what's most important to the trainer. Is your branding more important, and your likes on social media more important, or is really getting the player better more important?
Exactly.
And I've seen it. There's a couple guys that I've seen that do a lot of social media.
Yeah.
I mean, every workout's on social media, but on the same hand, that they're getting guys better. And then I've seen it the opposite, where there's so much social media and the guys never really do get better.
I tend to try to talk hoop with a trainer.
Yeah, I love to sit there and talk. What are you trying to do with this guy? Well, what on this drill or this move? What, and how does that fit in with the team thing? And I tell you another thing that I've seen that I really liked is I've sat with assistant coaches who coached that kid during the season and watched the trainer work with the kid. And there's interaction between the assistant coach and the trainer on as far as what they're doing. So that's probably the best situation.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you got somebody with eyes on the trainer, making sure that he's doing what the coach wants.
Yeah, and I think as someone who's working with a player, someone asks you what you're doing and what your plan is, you got to be able to answer. Now, some can, and some look at you like they ate a popsicle too fast, and they give you a brain freeze, and they have no idea, and they're making it up as they go along because they have no plan. They're just drill after drill after drill. So, I mean, I think trainers are needed. I think because of the fact there's so many players, like, like I think like especially in the off season, it's a different voice. But as a trainer, you need to take ownership in doing a good job and communicating with coaches. And look, if you're this, you're talking about this brand stuff. Well, if you're a real brand, you're going to continue to get better at your craft. B, you're going to set it up as a business where you're communicating with the coaches of all the players, especially if they're high school and college kids or pro players. You're going to communicate with coaching staffs because you're going to take ownership in what you're doing and communicate it to the coach, because the coach is the one who's going to control the minutes. So I think, you got to take ownership of that. I remember like 10 years ago having this discussion online about you need to be talking to coaches with trainers, and someone is like, I don't have time for that. Well, wait a minute. You have time to steal this client's money. You got time to call a fucking coach and get that thing going. Like, you need to take ownership in all this. You need to write things down. You need to evaluate the player. You need to, be honest with the player.
And it comes down to just, respect the game, respect the other coaches. And it just comes down to respect with what you're talking about as far as communicating with the coaches. Just respect what they're trying to do. I've never seen an NBA coach object or try to prevent a player from working with the trainer. Mm-hmm. I've never seen that happen. They know it's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's part of our business now. So the coach wants to be invested and he wants to have a relationship with the trainer. So the trainer's got to reciprocate and show the respect to the coach also. And for the most part, I think we do see that, but there's a small percentage where you don't see that communication and that respect back and forth.
No question. All right, we got a couple minutes left. Anything else you want to add to this?
Oh, I don't know. I just, wrapping up the whole trainer thing, you and I, and you especially, because you were with Tim a lot longer than me, but we were both so fortunate to be with him. And for me, it was just during the summers. It was year round. But the things that we learned working for him and the things that we saw and were just great for our careers, it gave us a chance to experiment and develop as coaches and kind of learn how to work with professional players. And those years that I had with him in the summer I'll cherish those, forever. And I'll always appreciate the chance that Tim gave me.
Yeah, I think,
we had some times, didn't we?
Oh my God, it was so fun. Because it's not like it is today, and that's fine. Things sort of change over time, but
yeah,
Tim had that thing like Alcatraz.
Yeah,
get in.
Come into Tim Grover's workout with the camera and see what happens.
Yeah, I've seen it where I've seen ESPN people get thrown out on their ass, and it's funny as hell seeing it. But it was Alcatraz. You couldn't get in. I got lucky getting hired, and it was right place, right time. Then you have all these NBA players, they're not dictating really anything.
No.
Trainers or coaches there weren't many coaches around. Tim didn't really let many people work for him. So you had these courts going, players were getting work in, and you're like, wow, this is off season. No one's allowed, they're getting their work in, they're playing. Tim talks to them totally truthful, some good, some bad, some ugly, mostly good. And then here's a guy telling you the truth who worked with the best. And then you get these players competing in workouts, getting shots up. Not everybody worked all that hard. It just is what it is. But most did. Most respected their careers. They paid a lot of money back then to work with Tim. And then you got the games, and it was great. Then you had pre-draft camp stuff and getting players ready. We had what? We had Channing Frye.
I remember your relationship with Mason Plumlee. One of the funniest things.
Oh, it was great.
I've been around. I mean, you and him together was great.
Oh no, I went at him pretty hard, but
it was great, and he just laughed.
Yeah, and
it was all hoops.
Yeah, it was all
hype. You got Hoops Hype, the website.
Yeah,
this was all hoops and no hype.
No hype. I mean, I like the bandbox gym. It reminded me of Rocky 3 when he's trying to get ready for the lane, and he got in that city gym where it was like a YMCA. He's used to that country club, and that's what he said. Tim said, look, you want to go out and train with someone else into a country club, great, do that. But this is like Shawshank. This is
and people, at Hoops the gym down there, his weight room, people couldn't believe, how small and how kind of primitive the weight room was.
What was it, 200 square feet, if that?
It was great.
It was literally the size of a decent restaurant's bathroom, maybe a little bigger. In the little kitchen where we made shakes for the players, that refrigerator, and it was crazy. It was crazy, but that was just a great time. And the trainer just sort of evolved and changed from that to so many people doing it. It reminded me of AAU basketball, where when I started in 93, 94, AAU basketball went to a tournament, and it was a lot of it was big time stuff because there weren't many teams around. Now you look at it 20 plus 25 years later, and there's a million teams, and it just waters it down. Some, just like trainers, some are really good, some are really bad, some are in the middle. But, I think trainers are needed because players need people to work with them. But I think as a trainer, two sides. I think as a trainer, you need to get better at your craft. You got to be professional. You got to communicate with coaches and the player and service the player, not just what you think, but what the player really needs. And that's a little different sometimes. And then as a parent, you need to continue to try to get the best people working with your children. You got to, ask your trainer questions, and, sometimes yeah, maybe you don't know basketball that well, but like just continue to like, talk to the trainer. And again, you pay them, they don't pay you. So it's a little different. So like you do control it to a certain degree, but as a trainer, you need to continue to get better. And look, if someone is a social media person, they're going to be a social media person. You're not going to stop that. But again, bring value, have substance, and be good enough where you could not just work with the best players, but you can turn above average players a little bit better. And that's what we're all trying to do.
And the last thing that I'll say about this is, hopefully, trainers that listen don't think that we're being too critical. We're just trying to be real. And to be honest with you, I like going to watch them because I learn stuff.
Yeah.
Like I go watch Noah LaRoche in the summer, and I learn some new stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial for me too. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I do too. It's really good. So I enjoy talking to, trainers that work with players. Like I said, I've had relationships when I was in Dallas. A lot of our guys worked with Drew Hanlon, Mike Penworthy, and those guys were good. Those guys came in, they talked to us, they told us when they were coming in, and that's really it. I don't get in the way of trainers because, if players work with a trainer, they work with a trainer. That's great. You talk to the trainer, you tell them your thoughts, they tell you, and then whatever the trainer's going to do, they're going to do anyway. So I think instead of being combative with it and you're just totally against it, you talk to them and you communicate. And look, if they're any good, that's great. If they're not, they're not. And either way, you got limited control. But I think that coaches and trainers need to sort of tear down that wall and be like, look, you're going to need each other. If the coach likes the trainer, the coach could send them players and it could help the trainer. If the trainer does a good job with your player, and regardless if you like the trainer or not, they're going to work with that player anyway. And why have that combative attitude towards it? But as a trainer, you need to, get off your high horse sometimes and be like, look, I need to get better at some of these things. And you got to evaluate yourself and not just do all this fancy stuff. Look, fancy stuff, there's a place for really good players, but most of the players that we work with are role players. They're average players. Look at the NBA, 80% of them are role players. There's about 100 that truly matter. And then after that, there's like 350 players that could go anywhere. It's like
plug and play,
rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic, my friend.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we solved the game's problems for one more day. I think we've robbed our money for the day, and I think we can go back to doing what we're doing. Obviously, you got a shithole back there in Manhattan Beach that
Yeah, it's time to get out to the beach for a little bit, sweet Chuck. And as always,
see you next time, buddy.
Okay.
Later.